I'm coming home.
Pass picked off by Fox. Here comes LeBron. Somehow Durant lets it go. Kevin Durant.
Unstoppable player we have in the NBA today.
Let's go. The Milwaukee Bucks select Jabari Parker.
The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
Return to the Mac.
And welcome back to the First Take UK podcast and our NBA preview shows. If you didn't check out the Atlantic Division, make sure you go back on the stream and find that Atlantic Division. Today we are doing the Central Division, the most talked about, the most discussed, and maybe the most top-heavy with good team divisions in all of the NBA, Stephen Edwards.
Yeah, this is the potential 1 and 2 in the Eastern Conference so far as we look at it. So, this is going to be a fun one. And it's my team as well. I get to talk about the Bulls for a while.
And I'm sure he's delighted to do that, people. And we start not with the Chicago Bulls, with the most discussed franchise. Maybe, if you look at the way news has grown, this franchise may be the most discussed in history for that 3-4 week span. The Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, I do believe somebody came home. Has he put it?
It's possible. It's possible. They went 33-49 last year. They didn't make the playoffs, but who cares about last year? They have had a complete turnover. Brown's out. David Black comes in. LeBron James returns home. They bring in guys like James Jones and Mike Miller. Then they go and draft Andrew Wiggins number 1 overall. But hold up, folks. They trade him to Minnesota, including Anthony Bennett, their former number 1 overall pick, to bring in Kevin Love, another top 10, top 15 player. The team is just stacked. I was writing down the rotations for us for this piece earlier today via RotoWorld, all these rotations are via RotoWorld, and as I was typing it out, including the bench, I was like, what the heck is going on here? Kyrie Irving at the point, Dion Waiters at the 2, LeBron at the 3, Kevin Love at the 4, Anderson Varejao is the center. Then on the bench they got Dellavedova, James Jones, Sean Marion, Mike Miller, Tristan Thompson, maybe Ray Allen? We'll talk about that in a bit. It's just so stacked, and they're missing a rim protector, we all know this, but they're as loaded as loaded can be.
Yeah, Miami 2.0 is looking pretty good.
Even better.
Yeah, it's looking even better, isn't it? I mean, you've got to say that Kevin Love's an upgrade over Chris Bosh. Kyrie Irving gives you more than Dwayne Wade does at this point in his career. So, yeah, the boy from Cleveland has done good. He's got some good players around him that are going to try and help him win another NBA title and deliver one to the city of Cleveland. Is this going to be like what the Heat were the first year that they put their big three together and couldn't quite get the job done? Don't know. It's been interesting. I'm going to see what happens with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The first thing I want to say about it is a friend of mine's a Portland Trail Blazers fan. So every year when I go out to the States, I get a thing through to say what the Trailblazers ticket prices are like. And it's hilarious. All the other Trailblazers tickets are pretty cheap, to be honest. It's a great place to go and watch basketball if you're close to the area. Oklahoma City Thunder tickets for them are a little bit expensive, but not overly. I think the most expensive tickets went about starts in the lower bowl at like $100, which isn't that bad, to be fair. If you want a Cleveland Cavaliers ticket the night that they go in and play in Portland, their lower bowl tickets start at over $200 each.
Oh man, you're dropping like $500 large on an experience to go and see LeBron James play basketball.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, just the impact of the guy is unbelievable. We can all agree to that. It is still funny to me that he's just the boy from Akron. I'm just the young man from Akron. Yeah, because every kid from Akron, hangs out with Jay-Z at the weekend, has a $10 billion deal with Nike, has his billboard around Cleveland. He isn't just a boy from Akron. But it is still a good storyline. It's going to be fun to see if they can make this thing work together. Because look, in Miami, they were surrounded by a championship organization. Now LeBron is trying to build one and bring him as the champion. And he's effectively the GM now, trying to build his championship organization. Outside of the guys on the bench and him, there isn't great experience. So we can say it's better than Miami because Irving has higher upside than Wade right now. People prefer Kevin Love to Chris Bosh. I'm pretty iffy on that decision. I really like Chris Bosh. none of them have won anything yet, and we're projecting with all of them. We're not saying, hey, we've been here, seen it, done it with the Miami Heat before, and they just brought in the best player in the world. It's a completely different complexion. So year one for me, I think they struggle up to like the All-Star break. I think it takes them a fair few months to get going. Then they get into rhythm, and it's just like unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was kind of nice that Kevin Love wore the same shirt number as the amount of playoff games he played in.
He should have gone with the double zero. I'm a big fan of the double zero.
Yeah, no, that should only be reserved for Robert Parrish. No, I mean, joking aside, I mean, Kevin Love hasn't played any playoff games. So that's going to be a new thing for him and how he adjusts to being able to do that. I think it's interesting as well to understand what Kyrie Irving's role might be on this team. I mean, this has been his team. Mm-hmm. This isn't his team anymore. I mean, I know that obviously Dwayne Wade deferred to LeBron James in Miami. I would expect this to be LeBron James's team. I certainly wouldn't expect LeBron James to defer to Kyrie Irving. I'm not Kyrie Irving's biggest fan. Everyone will know that from listening to the podcast. I've been quite critical of him. But I think you've got to expect Kyrie Irving's game to be elevated this year, playing alongside LeBron and Kevin Love. It'll be a lot easier for him because at times Kyrie Irving really was the only decent player in Cleveland that could play at any sort of level. You either had guys that were trying to develop and try and get to a reasonable level, or guys that really shouldn't have been playing there in the first place, or in the case of Luol Deng, a guy that really didn't want to be there at all. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a difficult road, I think, to start off with, trying to get players used to things, having that rookie coach in there. But, there's so much class on his team. You can't think that they're going to struggle for too long. I mean, I would expect this team to at least win 60 games.
There's so many questions with this team, and we want to do 2 questions per team, including Coach Marv's special question as we go through each team preview. But I've got so many about this team, I want to go quick fire with you instead. So let's go quick fire around this thing. First of all, what do they do with Dion Waiters? No longer is he needed a necessity after all the crap they've had to put up with him and Kyrie. Now he's a luxury 6th man. They'll move him on in an instant. What will you see from Dion this year?
I think he'll be a guy that will put up some really good stats because he's playing with all-stars everywhere. And I think they will potentially try and move him along. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't move Dellavedova into the starting lineup. Mm-hmm. Because he's one of the better defensive players on their team. So I think it'll be a good idea for them to move Dellavedova into the starting lineup and maybe play Dion Waiters coming off the bench. That would be a better look for me because you possibly want somebody else out there on the second unit. And I think he's better suited for that, and he'll have other guys around him that can help. I don't see the benefit in having him out there with the guys like LeBron and Kyrie at times for massive amounts of time. But yeah, so I would make that move, and if the right deal come along, then I'd perhaps move him along, because I think LeBron's probably more happy with guys being around him that he can trust, guys that have been there, seen there and done it, like if Ray Allen does come on board, and obviously he's played with James Jones and Mike Miller before. I mean, we've heard recently that maybe Mike Miller being moved along was kind of the first thing that soured LeBron James being in Miami, because he really didn't want Mike Miller going anywhere, and kind of blamed the Heat for getting rid of Mike Miller and, trying to cut salary just for the sake of it, of moving a guy along, because Miller played a pivotal role in their championship years. Yeah,
the Heat was stingy. They wouldn't pay the super luxury tax. They amnestied him. It was a dumb decision on reflection. What can you say about this? Think of the money they lost in losing LeBron James to the $3 million they had to pay to keep Mike Miller. Kind of a dumb balance sheet decision to make when you look back on it. My other question, we keep talking about roles. What will Dion's role be? How will they improve the front court? How will they play defensively? Will the LeBron, Kevin Love thing mesh? It all comes down to that head coach. He's the guy deciding the roles. We can all say, look, LeBron is the GM, he's the coach on the floor, but someone's going to make the substitutions, someone's going to put the lineups together. It's going to be David Blatt. First time coach, and more worrying than that, if you look at it from the negative point of view, is never been in a playoff series. Don't have them over here in Europe. Now he's in a 7-game playoff series. It's going to be very interesting to see how he can adapt from game to game when they get to the playoffs, as opposed to other coaches who've now been doing this for some time.
The sickening thing is, I'm going to sit here and say I think he'll be fine.
So do I. He's got LeBron James.
I really think he'll be fine. The thing is, for him, he's coached at various levels outside of the NBA.
Very high levels.
Been very successful wherever he's gone. He's a basketball genius. Is what he's regarded as by a hell of a lot of people. I think he'll be great. Even before LeBron came on board, I thought he would elevate this Cleveland franchise. So having LeBron there is just even better for him. I think he'll be just fine. I really do. And I think we'll be looking at David Blatt at the end of the season thinking, man, this is a good coach. But again, do we wonder about whether he'll get the credit he deserves because of coaching a guy like LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love? But yeah, he's a tremendous coach. I think he'll be just fine.
I agree. We did a pod when they brought him in, and we were both like so ecstatic that he got the shot because of all he'd done over here in Europe, and it doesn't matter if LeBron's there. I think he's going to be great, and he will garner the respect because we've seen now two coaches have great success with LeBron James, one not in terms of championships, the other with championships, and we all really think Eric Spoelstra is a good coach because you can still see, once they get to that second unit, how they work things through a playoff series, we will see that he's a damn good coach. A couple more questions. One, who defends outside of LeBron James, and how do they improve that front court?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing for me, isn't it? I mean, who does defend outside LeBron? I think, Sean Marion, I think will be a good defensive player for them because he has been. Anderson Varejao has always given you the energy and, he's going to be a key contributor for them. But I do worry about from a size point of view. I think that's going to be a big issue for them. I mean, LeBron, they, slightly diminished at the three, but I think LeBron at times will be the four and Kevin Love will be the five, and Kevin Love is not the best defensive player in the world. And I think that could cause some big issues. If teams decide to go with size against them, that might pose them, some problems. Or if team goes physical, which is obviously where a lot of people have still kind of lent on Chicago as maybe being the best team in the Eastern Conference because they've got many, many different looks and they can match up incredibly well against Cleveland. But I mean, I think for me, that's the reason why I would possibly move Dellavedova into the starting lineup and put Waiters on the bench as a sixth man. I think that's what Waiters is. I don't think he's a starting caliber player in this league. And I think you've got to have another defensive player out there because if not, then I think they could have problems matching up and guarding certain teams.
I think they got to go external to find the help, and there's plenty of guys out there, some cheaper guys, some more expensive guys. They've got some arsenal. They've got Tristan Thompson. They've got a ton of draft picks. If they wanted to move Waiters in a big way, they could do that. I mean, we've seen it banded around a ton throughout the offseason with what happened with Paul George over in Indiana and Lance Stevenson leaving. Maybe the Roy Hibbert thing where he's not even got anything to do offensively, just zone underneath, protect the rim, which he could certainly do. I think it's a thing they have to look into. And I've been reading time and time again that they keep going after certain players just constantly on the phone. The NBC's been reporting that a lot. So I think they're really doing everything to try and improve that front court. And we'll see 2 or 3 moves made by them to bulk up at the front.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to take the Cavaliers, this is the year to take them. Mm-hmm. I think if you give them another year and with like the exceptions that you can have on contracts and different things they can try and maneuver, then I think they're going to pose bigger problems further down the line over the next year, 2, 3 years. So I think if you're going to take them, this is going to be the 1 year. This, for me, is Chicago's championship window. After that, I'm just not so sure. I know people sit there and say, well, LeBron's getting older. Yeah, but he's not slowing down. He's still the best player on the planet. So it's very difficult for me to see that he's going to drop off considerably over the next 2 to 3 years. So, yeah, teams have got to look at it from this point of view that this is the 1 year because they haven't got as much flexibility as what they will have further down the line.
I agree. And, it's going to be difficult to take them. LeBron, people are saying, is maybe getting up there in age or whatever, but they've already said he's going to play like 70 games, maybe even 60. They're fine with sitting him. He's fine with sitting. That's going to do wonders for his career. He had to do everything last year in Miami. It's like getting the breaks he should have got last year, this year. Coach Marv's question before we move on to Detroit, which is where we're going next. He says, will Kyrie or LeBron average more points per game?
I think LeBron will do.
I think
I would expect Kyrie's output to increase. Mm-hmm. I still think LeBron will lead the team in scoring most nights. Some nights it'll be Kevin Love. Some nights it'll be Kyrie. But I think in general, LeBron will be the guy that will average the most points over the course of a season.
Let's go to Detroit then. A disastrous year last year. 29-53, missed the playoffs. This year they had Stan Van Gundy to do everything essentially. I don't know what he's not doing for the team in his new title there in Detroit. And I look at what they did this offseason. I'm incredibly disappointed. They had Jody Meeks, DJ Augustine on a decent value contract, but they lost Rodney Stuckey, who at times was their best player last year. And they're rolling again with Jennings, now Meeks, Smith, Monroe, and Drummond. And it just doesn't fit. And we all know it, and they know it, and I expect Stan to do a ton of things, and I think Jennings may even be bought out. Zach Lowe spoke about that before. I think Jennings may be bought out or traded, and Josh Smith will go, and they have to find a way to get Monroe in a long-term contract and build around him and especially around Drummond.
Yeah, I think if they can get rid of Brandon Jennings, they will do. You shouldn't have an issue starting DJ Augustine. He was tremendous last season for Chicago. I mean, he was a big reason why the Bulls made the playoffs last season, outside of Joakim Noah as well. Them two were just great. Jennings is just a train wreck. Never ever liked that deal at all. I hated it. I think Jody Meeks is a good pickup. I mean, at times for the Lakers last year, he looked very, very good. The contract for me, I thought was fine. 3 years, 18 million, I think that's a really good contract. I think on any given night, that guy can average 15, 20 points. I think you're going to get your score in there. I think it'll be interesting for me, though, around what happens with Drummond. Because you've brought in a guy here in Stan Van Gundy who did wonders for Dwight Howard.
Not that Dwight ever
Drummond,
thanked him.
who's a more, like Howard, a bit of a freak athletically, a big time rim protector, which what Howard was as well. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that Drummond is Dwight Howard, but it'll be interesting to see how he decides to work with Drummond and what Drummond does in terms of elevating his game. I think we might see a really big time year out of Drummond. Obviously, he went to the Team USA over in FIBA as well, and that's how highly regarded he is. I would expect Andre Drummond this year to be an all-star and look really, really difficult to handle.
I think Drummond's fantastic, and I think this Howard comparison is so fine. People get on people for using that comparison, but is there a better comparison at this stage in their career? Maybe he doesn't have the exact bulk and size, but no one on the planet does. That's why Dwight Howard's Dwight Howard. The issue I have with Drummond in terms of his growth, and I think he's going to be terrific and great, don't get me wrong, and he was fantastic in the FIBA because he's such a physically imposing and raw talent, but he's a 1 in 4 out guy. That's what Dwight should be. You know, you have him there in the post and you kick it out and you just surround him with shooters. Look at the roster. I mean, Josh Smith can't hit an outside shot anymore, and he's the small forward. Greg Monroe can't stretch the floor. Meeks can, like you said, Jennings is a disaster. They need to overhaul the thing around him and just surround him with shooters. And so for the early parts of the season, I think it's going to be rough because Josh Smith wants the ball, Jennings wants the ball, Monroe's in a contract year. He just bet on himself with the qualifying offer. He wants the ball. It could be bad for his growth if they don't move them out in the first couple of months. And I don't know who's going to want to take him. Unless you buy out Brandon Jennings and you can't buy out Josh Smith, that's like 60 million. Who's going to take these guys?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. I mean, I think for me, the ideal makeup on the floor is Drummond, Monroe, Butler, Meeks, and Augustine. Mm-hmm. That, for me, is the lineup you should try and play as much as you possibly can.
And I like KCP. He can shoot.
Yeah. Yes, you would love to do 1 and 4. I don't think you can quite do that yet. You haven't got the players to be able to do that yet. But again, it's like a transitional period. But I think Drummond is just going to be so good. I'm buying heavily on him at the moment. That I think could be the guy alongside Jody Meeks if they can get DJ Augustine on the court for a bulk of minutes. Then I think this team could potentially push for a playoff spot. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they could very well push for one.
Is the only possible place you could trade Josh Smith right now the Lakers? They have 0 defense. They only have Wes Johnson at small forward. Their first round pick, like we've said in the past, is top 5 protected, so they're probably going to lose it anyway.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe Detroit are so desperate to get rid of him, they're fine with taking the top 5 gamble. It's just like giving him away, but you get rid of the contract and him. They bring in someone in that salary cap space that's sort of in an alien territory because they can't fill it with a max guy, but they haven't been able to fill it with a guy who's good enough to command that salary, and people are getting on them because Kobe took the money. Kobe wants to win, you get him a defender. And no one's going to take him anyway. That's the only situation I can think of where you basically give him away. And maybe that top 5 pick comes to you because Drummond goes down or whatever, but that's all I can think of. I can't see them moving him at all.
No, I mean, Josh Smith's the guy you want to move. I mean, I hate, again, another hated contract. I mean, Detroit did something that a lot of teams don't do and make me hate 2 contracts on the same team.
And they've got to clear up space to re-sign Monroe if they want to go that way. And if they're not going to go 1 in 4 out, at least have 3 sharpshooters around there, and they're not even close to that right now. Like you said, they have to go with some sort of Butler-Augustine lineup in there. I don't want Jennings even close to starting, so that's the only trade I can see elsewhere. I mean, people don't have the cap space or the want to go and get a Josh Smith.
No. I mean, why would you even try and invest into that? I mean, it's not as if you've got him on an expiring deal. You've got to put up with him for a while longer above that. So yeah, I wouldn't touch him. I hated it. It was just such an awful contract. It's $12 million a year. Really? No.
Coach Marv's big question: can Stan Van Gundy turn Drummond into the East's most dominant defensive big? We mentioned Drummond here, so let's predict how he's going to be defensively. Will he be the best rim protector in the conference?
He'll be a step below Noah.
Okay.
But he's on his way.
Driving to the lane, I think Noah's the most feared driving to the lane because of the attitude thing. I think that's a big part of it. But driving to the lane, do people fear more Drummond or do they fear Hibbert? I think Hibbert's just a bigger guy and he's 7 feet. Would you fear driving to the lane more Hibbert or Drummond?
Drummond over Hibbert. Drummond, for me to say, I mean, let alone what he does from an offensive standpoint, the guy's an all-star. He really is. I'd say, the thing is, I've been brought up on defensive basketball, so maybe I'm a bit biased. Some other guys will probably sit here and say, well, no, I'll take Brook Lopez. But I really like Drummond. Absolute freak.
He's going to be a monster. He's going to be a monster.
Just absolute monster. I wouldn't want to drive on him. I wouldn't want to drive on Noah either, to be completely honest with you. I think I'd take the night off against both of those guys. But yeah, Drummond has got the right guy with him now.
Okay, let's go to the Chicago Bulls. Steven Edwards' beloved Bulls. You went 48-34 last year, lost in the first round. A surprise to some. You just lacked that one extra piece. And we know what that extra piece is, people. And it returns this year, we hope. We all pray as basketball fans to the gods of basketball. Please let us have Derrick Rose for a full year. You signed Pau Gasol, Nikola Mirotic, bringing Doug McDermott in the draft. It was a wonderful, wonderful offseason. It really couldn't have gone much better for you outside of Carmelo, which was, a long shot, but could have happened. I thought it was a wonderful offseason. Yeah,
I mean, I wasn't that worried about Melo. I didn't think he'd ever sign with us, and I think we did better by not signing him. Because it opened up us being able to bring over Nikola Mirotic. I think for me, the big question is how much is Mirotic going to play? He's in a crowded front court, and I think that's where he may not see much action this year. I mean,
crowded in a good way.
Like Pau Gasol was good. I like Pau Gasol. I mean, he was on the All-Star team at FIBA. He was tremendous for Spain in that tournament. Anyone who thought Pau Gasol was finished is sorely mistaken.
Do you think that it's written in now in their depth chart that Pau starts? I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think Taj even plays more minutes, almost in a boozer way, but doesn't start.
Yeah, I think the minutes still get divided up. I mean, I think it's at the end of the day, there's 96 minutes to divide up between Noah, Gasol, Taj, and Nazir Mohammed. I mean, Nazir Mohammed's going to play 5 minutes. Maybe
That's
10
such a
minutes,
fun front court, Just think about it. And again, I'll use this thing all the way through because I'm writing these rotations down. I was slightly underwhelmed. I was thinking they had such a great offseason. I'm not a big Butler fan. I'm not a big Dunleavy fan. But that front court is so good and it's going to be so fun. We both love Taj Gibson. I love Pau. Joakim's one of our favourites and we're, big believers in what Nikola Mirotic can do in the league. That's incredible. Is that the best front court all round in the league, top to bottom?
Yeah, it is. It's without a doubt it is. It is the best front court and it can give you so many different looks as well. I mean, Noah last season was just absolutely tremendous. I mean, for me, probably should have got more MVP consideration than he did. He rightfully the defensive player of the year. Taj Gibson should have got sixth man of the year, but he didn't get that one. But I mean, there's no knock on what he actually gave the Bulls last season. Pau Gasol will be the starting power forward. Taj again will come off the bench. There was rumours flying around that he'd been told that he would be the starter.
Rumours? They announced it.
And well, the thing was, I think there's a lot of contravening stories around that. now that started to come out. So we don't really know the full picture now. But if they have come out and said that, I think it's a bad scenario to put yourself in. It doesn't probably bode well.
We said at the time how unnecessary it was. Remember, we were like, why would you do that? They announced it before the draft, before free agency. We were like, why on earth would you? And it wasn't a press release announcement, but it was an interview, if I remember correctly. Like, why even insinuate it? Just say, hey, we're going to put the best 5 guys to start on the floor when we get to opening night. It's a ways away. Weird decision.
I know, it was a very poor decision again. It's got the Bulls, bad PR move. Who'd have thought that? But Taji's still going to finish the games. Gasol is not going to be out there when the game's on the line. I think this is sometimes what annoys me about Thibodeau, is that he doesn't shake things up. He's so regimented that he has Noah out there and he has Taj at the end of the game. Even when the Bulls are behind, and all of a sudden you start thinking, well, where's the basket going to come from? I have no idea, because I just really don't. I think that's one of the big issues. I think he's got to try and mix it up, that sometimes Gasol does finish games, certainly when the Bulls might need a basket. But I think the big one for me, and I'll say this to you now from this moment on, is that Doug McDermott is not Doug McDermott. He's Doug McBuckets. We've not bought onto that yet. He's McBuckets. He's been tremendous in pre-season. The guy can shoot absolutely ridiculous. I think he's going to be so much fun to watch this season. But the big question I asked is how much playing time will the rookies see? And that's my big concern coming into season. I don't think Mirotic will see that much playing time, but I would expect McDermott hopefully to see a fair chunk of playing time. I mean, Tony Snell played a fair amount last season, but a lot of that was down to injuries. So it'll be interesting with like a full complement of players how much a guy like Doug McDermott does play.
This is what's annoying about Thibodeau, is he's a great coach. We all think he's one of the best, but like there's a reason I think he hasn't won a championship. And it's the regimented stuff, it's the overuse of minutes, and it's things like, it doesn't matter if he's a rookie, sophomore, 10-year vet, if he's the best player for the situation, put him on the court. And I understand his thought of the situation is they gotta play both sides defensively, he needs them for the on-ball pressure, but Doug can shoot. I want that guy out there on the court very often, and I think Mirotic is gonna be a great stretch four. And I want that guy out there with Derrick Rose. And we haven't asked that big question. I think it's a weird one to ask because you've got all these previews, these written ones, pods, radio, Google Hangouts. Everyone's asking the same question about Derrick Rose. How can we answer the question? I have no idea. We haven't even got it down here as a question because what can you say? We just have no clue. But if he is anything like he can be, and we've seen the explosion through Team USA to preseason, if you can stretch the floor with McDermott and Mirotic, who cares? Who really cares if they're rookies or not? They can both shoot. Doug can really shoot it, and that's going to stretch the floor. Yeah.
I mean, Derrick Rose hasn't had a guy that could stretch the floor like McDermott since Kyle Korver.
And was devastating.
Yeah. But Chicago didn't play Korver at times because they didn't value what he could bring to the floor defensively, and that was one of the big concerns. And the better teams around the NBA just eat up a guy like Kyle Korver, and I think unfortunately they'll eat up a guy like a Doug McDermott. But again, I think from a trust issue point of view, and it's only pre-season, and people might think I'm getting a bit carried away here, but I don't know if you saw this the other night, but the Bulls were playing the Atlanta Hawks in a pre-season game, and Jimmy Butler made the 3 as time expired.
Mm-hmm.
That said a lot to me. That should have been McDermott's shot. Why is Jimmy Butler taking that shot? Jimmy Butler is not a good 3-point shooter. He regressed last year as a 3-point shooter. And you called a play for Jimmy Butler to take that 3 as time expired. I know it's pre-season, and people might say, well, hang on a minute, and it's pre-season. That wouldn't happen in a regular season game, but that's Doug McDermott's shot.
Yeah.
If you're relying on Jimmy Butler consistently to knock down that shot, I think there's going to be a few tears as the season goes along. Jimmy Butler, I think, apparently has worked a hell of a lot on his game over the off-season, but then so does everyone else. I mean, what do people think they do in the off-season?
I do love those stories when they come out, and it's like Ty Lawson working harder than ever. It's like, yeah, everyone's working like crazy right now to try and perform in the NBA. I put zero stock in the preseason. I just do. I don't trust it at all because there's so many games I don't think they play. Kobe's not driven to the hoop once because he doesn't want to get hurt. He's just taking these jumpers, and now people are freaking out. The only team I put stock in is the Bulls because of Thibodeau, and the guy's crazy. And he's working like, what is it, 21 hours a day he says he works or something, or they claim he works. He didn't say anything because he's too busy working. So to me, he would treat that as a game. He's an in-game situation. So that does worry me slightly for the Bulls' point of view. My big question for them is about Noah, because I love him. and he was close to a triple-double at times last year, and he was just a dominant force on both sides of the floor. It worries me that they will regress to just running the whole thing through D-Rose. I think you have to give Noah just an equal portion as the offense as last year and think, wow, we've got a MVP caliber player in Derrick Rose here, because Noah was so good as that offensive focal point last year.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to bring him out, give him the ball up in the high post. Worked very, very successful last year. But the problem was...
Does it depend on if Derrick Rose's three-point range is there?
I don't know if it depends on that, but I think you've just got to use it as a different look. I think the problem was by the time the playoffs come around, the balls became very, very predictable.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why Noah disappeared in the playoffs, because everyone knew exactly how they were going to go. And if you shut down Augustine and you shut down Noah, then they realised that the balls really didn't have that much about them. It was only like Dunleavy's ridiculous game in Washington that actually made that series go 5 games, because the balls were actually outplayed in every facet of every game other than that. So Rose has got to knock down the outside shot consistently, but I really want Derrick Rose to actually stop taking threes, because he just cannot knock it down. He just can't on a consistent basis. But I think you've still got to put some of the offense through Noah. Derrick Rose obviously will handle the bulk of it, but I think you've got to give a different look, because otherwise you're just going to become predictable again. And I think you've got to start the season maybe going a bit of both, and then gradually get Rose more and more into the offense and let him take a greater control. And I think it's got to lean on, hopefully, Derrick Rose's maturity, that he knows when's the best time to try and defer down to Noah to try and make the play, or whether he actually needs to be the guy that steps up and makes it at that particular moment. And if he can't do that, then again, that's another worry for me. But I think we should be just fine. I would fully expect the Bulls to win 60+ games this year.
Coach Marv's question, do Powell, Mirotic and McBuckets put the Bulls over the top? To me, I think it's really important. Those 3 pieces, I mean, you can never overstate how big it is to get Derrick Rose back. But those 3 pieces now provide a safeguard that you guys are going to be really close regardless of the Derrick Rose situation. Do those 3 guys put you over the top? Do you see yourself celebrating an NBA championship this year? I think you do. I think you're nervous to say it, but I think you do.
I think we're as close to an NBA title right now as we have been since the Jordan era. Mm-hmm. I don't think any other time I've ever thought we've got a shot. The Miami Heat years were just really, really awful for Chicago. I know that we played the Heat in a tough series a few years ago when Rose was healthy, but we really weren't close to it. I think this year is the best team that we've had on the Thibodeau, and the best Bulls team that I've seen for a very, very long time. It makes me nervous start talking about championships. I think because still for me the Cleveland Cavaliers are still the best team in the Eastern Conference. I think the Bulls match up well. I said that right from the get-go, even from LeBron James through Kevin Love coming over. I still think we match up incredibly well, and I think they're the team that wouldn't want to face us, more so that we wouldn't want to face them. But the Western Conference teams do scare me a bit. I think the Spurs still scare me a bit. And actually the Clippers scare me as well. I think we're going to be there. Well, we've got a chance. You talk about percentage chances of winning the NBA title. I would put us somewhere around about maybe a 20-25% chance of winning an NBA title this year.
A good chance then. A good chance for the Chicago Bulls.
We'll be one of the teams that are there. I think the NBA title could only be won
5
by
teams.
maybe 4 teams, which is the Bulls, the Cavs, the Spurs,
Thunder.
and the Clippers.
Thunder?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. They haven't done enough for me over the off-season. Durant's injured as well. They're going to have to heavily rely on Russell Westbrook. I would fully expect him to get injured at some point in this season as well.
I'm stunned by that.
And again, you talk about Chicago. I mean, Chicago's 25%. Rose gets injured, 0%.
I don't know about 0%. That's what I'm saying. The fail-safe for the 3 other guys, obviously, it'd be at least 1%, I'd say, in that scenario.
We haven't got a chance of winning the NBA title. It's not that we need Derrick Rose to be back to 2010, 2011 Derrick Rose.
Hey, people will fear him regardless.
But we need him back to being a guy that strikes fear, as you say, into defenses around the NBA. And that's what will open up the floor for everyone else.
Let's go to the Milwaukee Bucks and a really, really interesting team. They went 15-67 last year. Try as hard as you can do and you will not lose 15 games in the NBA. Look, the 76ers tried. They didn't lose 67 games in the NBA. They obviously did not make the playoffs. Big offseason for them. They had Jabari Parker, almost a surefire bet for Rookie of the Year. Everyone's just hammering the money on Jabari to be the Rookie of the Year. They bring in Jason Kidd after his failed attempt to stab Billy King in the back in Brooklyn. They trade for Jason Kidd. They did some really, really interesting things this offseason, and they've got a loaded squad. You look at the young talent they have, everyone's young and talented. I don't know how they're going to split the minutes up, that's the big question, but Brandon Knight's good, Jabari, Ilyasova, Larry Sanders got that big contract extension. Can he finally get on the court? I like the Kendall Marshall pickup, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, John Henson. Lots of young talent there.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is if I keep on getting tweets or comments around the fact that the NBA has sent over two poor teams, I'm going to lose my rag.
Hey, everyone's going to be bold. We're going to get Giannis MVP talk by the time they bring over Carmelo and Giannis.
It's just getting on my nerves. It really is. I mean, Jabari Parker, we're going to be seeing probably the Rookie of the Year.
And a
Jabari is
multi-time All-Star.
It's because he's not a big name. Everyone keeps saying, I want to see LeBron, I want to see Tim Duncan.
Good luck with that.
You're not going to see those players come over here. Just stop.
You're seeing Carmelo Anthony. What are they talking about? They're seeing a top 10 guy.
Exactly, but it's like I said to the guy that raised it with me. I was like, you'll never be satisfied. Everyone will just always complain about which teams are coming over because it's not the team that they want to see.
So they're bringing Phil Jackson and Carmelo Anthony, and people still aren't happy. The New York Knicks, the most expensive team, the biggest team in the NBA in terms of market value, and we're still not happy. Plus Jabari and Giannis and Jason Kidd, another Hall of Famer. Yeah, wow, they couldn't have got a better matchup. Teams won't travel to London, England in the middle of the season. They won't. Try asking the Spurs. Be my guest. They would do what they did the other night with the Suns, where they sent the assistant coach to coach the team, and they sent no first-team players. I mean, that's what they do.
Do you know what? That was, taking a sake away from it, that was one of the most ridiculous things ever for the Suns to come out and do that. I mean, for goodness sake, it's a pre-season game.
It was such a grab because he's such a tight man with his money, and he wrecked the Steve Nash era by trading all the first-round picks and not ponying up the double luxury tax. And he's trying to look like a good guy by offering a gift. If he was bothered, offer a free in-game ticket to the Spurs game or something like that. Say the people who bought the pre-season ones get a game in the season.
Yeah, exactly. To go and see the Spurs.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Like he thought he was being like, that was so planned from tip off when he knew they weren't there, and he did it. What was it? Just before 2 minutes to go or something, wasn't it? If I remember.
2 minutes to go in the third quarter, I think, wasn't it?
So probably like there was no one there anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but it's pre-season. You pay for what you get.
Oh yeah, it's all on the consumer.
Pre-season. I mean, going back to the guys coming over. I mean, I tell you what, I would do anything probably to interview Phil Jackson.
Well, you'll have your shot.
I mean, I'd jump at the opportunity to be able to do that. I'm ecstatic that the Knicks and the Bucks are coming over. I think it should be a really good game. And if anyone thinks that that's going to be a foregone conclusion, the Knicks are going to win that, I think you're going to be sorely mistaken. The Knicks are developing a bit of a fan base over here now because it's not the first time they've been over. And with New York being one of the closest cities to London in terms of travel for people going over to the United States, I mean, it should be certainly a Knicks crowd, but don't look past the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm looking forward to seeing this team this year. I think Kendall Marshall for me was a really great pickup. I mean, he was fun to watch for the Lakers last year. You put Kendall Marshall out there with Jabari Parker. That should make for some interesting fast breaks.
I know that the Lakers had Steve Nash coming back and they signed Jeremy Lin, but why did they waive Kendall Marshall? That was so weird. It's such a Lakers move to do. Anyway, we got to get onto the Milwaukee team. We got to do this team preview. How quickly, as you said here, will Jabari lift Milwaukee? How good will he be in year one?
I think he'll be great. Mm-hmm. I think he really will be. I think he'll average over 20 points a game. I think he'll
he just can't stop scoring. If you watched him in preseason, the guy is just dominant. Like, low post, mid-range, outside jump shot. He's a complete offensive force already. He's just like Melo.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about him being the most NBA-ready guy. Mm-hmm. And he just is. His skill set is incredible. There are guys that try and make the transition from the NCAA to the NBA, and it's a struggle the first year as they try and find their feet. Jabari, for me, doesn't look like he's he's missed a beat. I think he'll be tremendous this season, and Milwaukee fans are in for a special treat. I mean, it's been a long time since Milwaukee have had a guy they can really get behind and really come out in full force to support. But I think Jabari's the guy this year.
I agree, and they got the Greek Freak as well as the box office factor. And we've seen him play some point guard in preseason. That's been a big storyline, and he looks atrocious there, and they should never do it again. But I am interested to see Jason Kidd figure out the lineup, because you can do so many things with it. Jabari can play 2, 3, and 4. I think they'll just experiment all year, and we'll see sometimes Giannis is at the 5. At some point, we'll see him play the point. They have a team that can basically just throw the 5 guys out there on the court, and there's not even positions. They'll just roll the ball out. That's how talented, how deep they are, and how much the talent is interchangeable.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I think the one guy they probably want to move is Larry Sanders.
As in move on, or
I would move him on as quickly as you possibly can.
Can you possibly move a guy who keeps getting in trouble off the court and can't stay healthy on the court, who's got like a 5-year, $60 million contract?
Well, let's not talk about a contract they should never have offered him in the first place.
Who the heck would take that? In all seriousness, who would take that? Even the Lakers wouldn't take that.
No, they wouldn't. Nobody would take it, and that's the problem. I'd try and move him, but you're never going to get your money's worth, and that's a problem.
You're not going to get any's worth. Who the heck is taking that contract?
Exactly. You're not, but I try and do it. I try and give him away for absolutely anything you possibly can. Maybe the Knicks would take that contract.
Like those trades where like Joel Anthony goes to the rights to an overseas player who's like 40. One of those giveaway trades. I love those trades. They always happen. It's really fun.
Yeah, guys have either never seen the NBA or haven't been in the NBA for years.
Yeah, it's always really fun.
You go, who?
I like Ilyasova.
I do.
I like Parker. I like Antetokounmpo. I really like Chris Middleton and John Henson. I just think this team's going to be fun. I don't think they'll win any games. I think they'll be dreadful. But I think they'll be close in a lot of games, and they're going to be a real great League Pass team to watch. Just to watch Jabari, just to watch Giannis come along, and to watch Ilyasova. They're going to be really fun.
Yeah, it'll be really fun. They need to stay in the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
They're one team that does it. They need to get Jabari Parker help.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to stay in the lottery this season. I think they will do as well. But yeah, they'll be fun. I mean, some nights you'll turn on like the highlights on ESPN or whatever, and you'll just see Jabari Parker for about 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Just incredible. I mean, for me, he's one of those guys that you sit and think, yeah, he's one of the guys I want to see over the course of the season. See how he rips apart teams, because I think he can do.
He's funny as well because he's like the only guy we know right now he's going to be a multi-time All-Star. It's not even close. He's going to have at least 3 All-Stars minimum in his future.
I think he'll be an All-Star this year.
Really?
Yeah.
He gathers like the internet support in this day and age, the social media. Everyone loves to spot the college guy. We saw him last year, and he was the high school big name guy. People don't like Wiggins because he was so hyped. I think it's a good point.
Yeah, I do think he'll be the surprise All-Star this year.
I like that. It's a great shout from Stephen Evans, Jabari Parker to be an All-Star. Watch out for that. A bonus question before we get to Coach Marv's question. This was brought up by Grantland again, and I've cited them a lot during this, but I love Zach Lowe, as you know, Stephen. He's just the best there is writing about the NBA right now. And Simmons returned for their NBA previews going on right now. They've both been dropping some doozies about this Milwaukee situation. I don't know all the stats and figures. I can't go back into it. Go and check out Grantland, check out Bill and Jalen's preview. They go into it in more detail. Essentially, Milwaukee has a 1-year gap to find a new stadium, arena. Try building an arena in 1 year, by the way. And if they don't, the league can buy the team back for almost half the money they just sold it for. They're really close to being moved. Like, it's an underlying storyline. A year is not a long time. To build an arena, to find a new home, because their building isn't good enough. This team could be moving from Milwaukee. Imagine that they finally get Jabari Parker and they have to move to Seattle or somewhere. I think the league wants to buy that team back and wants to sell it on after what happened with the Clippers.
Yeah, so, I mean, what are we looking at? Kevin Durant gets drafted by the Seattle Supersonics, and then they move to Oklahoma City, so the NBA does the honorable thing.
Brings them Jabari.
And gives them Jabari Parker.
But I mean, if they can buy it back for $750 million, I think is the price. And franchises are going for $2 billion. This would be a $1.2 billion franchise, I'd say. With a new TV deal, maybe 1.4.
Yeah.
I mean, what a quick turnaround investment for the league, for Adam Silver. Everyone wins. He sends them to wherever he wants to send them. Milwaukee's in trouble here. They have to get a big group of local investors to buy this thing.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, this year I think the attendances in Milwaukee will go up because of everyone making the trip from Chicago.
Mm-hmm. As you've said many times, people travel there. And if you're a businessman right now in Chicago, and Bill said this on their preview, they need someone who's like a construction magnate to agree to fund the stadium now and figure the cost out later, just to get the arena there so they stay.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's not going to be in Milwaukee. That might have to be a guy that's more down, what's it, so like an hour and a half down the road, I think it is.
I mean, I'm worried they're going to lose that team, and it's just, you get this Giannis guy drops out the sky who no one saw coming, then they get Jabari Parker. It could
and they're going back in the lottery again this year.
And yeah, they could find a star there. That could all be over in a year.
Yeah, and then Seattle goes, everything's all right with the world again.
And the NBA makes even more money that they didn't have to make or need to make. It's going to be wonderful.
Do you know, the funny thing is with that, though, is if Milwaukee then goes to Seattle and they end up with all these stars, and then Kevin Durant then leaves as a free agent, I tell you, everyone in Seattle's going, didn't win a title when you went to Oklahoma City and you've lost Kevin Durant as well.
Coach Marv's big question for the Milwaukee Bucks: is Jason Kidd a sneaky bet for Coach of the Year? If that talent figures itself out, if Jabari's really good and they win like 30 games shockingly, is that Coach of the Year candidate? He gets in like just some discussion. He makes the ballot.
I tell you what, Jason Kidd is more likely to accidentally drop a cup of water than he is to win Coach of the Year.
Jason Kidd's more likely to stab someone in the back and move teams within 3 weeks. It could happen. Could happen.
I'm surprised he didn't do a Belichick and
one day.
For a day.
And just goes to Orlando when they fire Jack Vaughn. It's like, oh, I'm off. Going to coach Victor Oladipo.
Oh man, I hate Jason Kidd.
Okay, let's move on to the Indiana Pacers to round out this episode. They went 56-26 last year. They lost in the Eastern Conference Finals again, but how times have changed. They had CJ Miles, Rodney Stuckey, who I think is a great addition. They lose Paul George to that horrendous injury that no one can watch again. They lose Lance Stevenson, which is just a killer blow. They lose Evan Turner as well. They did re-sign their coach, Frank Vogel. Lots of discussion about maybe he'll be gone, maybe he'll be fired. They committed to him for the long term. It's just a bad situation right now. You can't lose Paul George and Lance Stevenson and expect to go in with any real competitiveness.
So the Indiana Pacers are now struggling. Oh well.
You don't sound very concerned.
I'm not. I feel sorry for Vogel. There are players on his team that have caused so many issues for him and other people on his team. It's just poor, isn't it? I mean, David West kind of seems like he doesn't want to play in the NBA anymore. And he's ready to walk away from it. Roy Hibbert, who knows what he's going to be like coming into this season. George Hill shouldn't be a starting point guard in this league. Rodney Stuckey is obviously going to be, I think, the best player they're going to have on most nights. He'll be the top scorer for this team.
Which is so weird to think of.
Yeah, I know. Just looking back, I mean, we were looking at a team that were the team with the best record in the Eastern Conference last season. And now all of a sudden we're looking at Rodney Stuckey being their top scorer.
The whole situation's so weird because they didn't re-sign Lance. He went to Charlotte and he went on a short-term deal to get into the new CBA, which I kind of like for his point of view. I mean, they should have just re-signed him, but we all know that they won't go into the luxury tax and things like that. They said they didn't have the money to compete with the offers, but you can always bring them in with the bird rights and things like that. You just feel like just sign Lance and just go with this thing. And now, do they, you said here which Roy Hibbert shows up. To me, I'm still on the train of they should probably look at getting value back for Roy Hibbert and go in the complete other direction. Get yourself in the lottery and bring in a lottery pick along with Paul George as your foundations going forward. I mean, West is 34, I think, and like you said, looks like he's eating and drinking, like he doesn't want to be in the league anymore. You've just got to move West and Hibbert and whoever else and hit the detonation button and rebuild. And I'm glad that Vogel, who became the talking point as, did he lose the locker room? Was it his fault? Was it Larry Bird who made the trades fault? Whose fault was it? Was his head going to roll? Remember, we were talking about it all the time. He was going to go, he was going to go. I'm happy they made the commitment to him. Now you've got that in place and no questions will be asked. Why not just go the other way?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to potentially look at trying to blow this team up, and I'm surprised they haven't blown it up over the off season after the Paul George situation. Very, very sad that the injury that he had. We still don't know when he's going to be back, and it looks like he is going to be gone for the whole year. But they're a team that was the best team in the NBA last season, in the Eastern Conference, shall we say. But they were still acted like a small market team when it really mattered. I mean, Lance Stevenson, I know that obviously he wasn't the most likable guy, but he was still a tremendous talent for them. And for me, even as a Bulls fan, I would have loved to have Lance Stevenson. You know, I thought he was, a really good player. And I think when we talk about Charlotte on our next preview, we're going to be talking about him in glowing terms. I think they've kind of had to almost remake themselves, and I don't think they've remade themselves in the mold of their coach. And anytime you have a team that isn't in the mold of their coach, it doesn't go well. Anyone remember when Don Nelson tried to coach the New York Knicks? Mm-hmm. Didn't go well. Frank Vogel's now all of a sudden got guys on his team that don't play defense. And that's going to be one of the big issues, because if, say for me, David Westbrook was completely disinterested, Roy Hibbert is not the player that was out there the first 2 months of the season, George Hill shouldn't be around in this league, this team could be very, very bad, and very, very bad in a hurry. I could potentially make a case for this team being below Milwaukee, maybe. Could be. Depending on how things go.
The only good thing
I would
about
try and
them,
move Roy Hibbert, but I don't think you'll get value for him. And I think that's going to be the biggest key that's going to mean that he could be around this season for a lot longer.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, because that's the reason they didn't hit the detonation button in the off-season, was because there was no way they were getting value after what Roy Hibbert did second half of the year. Now, if he's great the first half of the year, you have to sell high, because you've seen what can happen with him. And it's such a shame for Frank Vogel having this squad, and you look at it and there's just no talent. And no real frontline talent. CJ Miles is starting for them. George Hill is starting for them. David West isn't interested. I mean, it's just a disaster. And I love Vogel. I think they'll be fine long term, especially with Paul George back. But yeah, you need to go with the coach's identity, on-ball pressure, big man patrolling the paint, and then tons of athletes on the outside, and they just don't have it anymore. And it's going to be a rough season for them. And Coach Marv's key question, we already answered who will lead them in scoring. I think it'll be Stuckey. I think you do too. Coach's question was, how far do they slip? This could be a major, major slide the other way, and I hope that Vogel then gets no pressure on him because of it. I don't think he will because of the contract, but they could slide way back into the lottery. Yeah,
for me, as I say, I could make a case for him actually finishing last in his division. Mm-hmm. If Milwaukee and Jabari Parker really play well, then I think they can go above him. I don't think Milwaukee have got enough at the minute to get past Detroit, because I think Detroit will be the team that will finish third in this division. But yeah, I can make a case of Pacers slipping. I think the odds are against them slipping down past the Bucks, but there is a chance of that. Now if they get another injury, that could get really ugly. I mean, if say for argument's sake, if England's Stuckey is going to be their scoring, if he then gets injured, I mean that's bad news. I mean, you didn't have to rely on CJ Miles to be your top scorer on the team, and the bench for me is very, very ordinary. I mean, Louis Scola is a guy that now is so worn down with playing international basketball every single off-season. I mean, he really should have given that up some time ago, because it's really regressed his talent, because he looks tired.
All the time as well.
He should be playing that off-season. I mean, Tony Parker talked about, how many off-season tournaments that he was involved in, and that's the reason why he didn't play in FIBA, because he wants to make that final run at the 2016 Olympics. At some time, you've got to hold your head up, and I know you obviously, it's so great playing for your country, but you've got to turn around and think to yourself, how does that affect my NBA game? Because I think Louis Scola, has done himself out of money, because teams aren't willing to pay him big time money, because I think his talents have regressed due to he just isn't a player he was anymore. He's just been used too much.
Let's get to the divisional predictions then, the divisional winner and the divisional MVP. I have the Chicago Bulls winning the division, and I think they'll get it together. They're more complete out the gate, and it's going to take the Cavs some time to figure some things out before they become an offensive juggernaut. And my division MVP has to be LeBron James. He's the best player on the planet, and I think he's got a great shot because Durant's gone down. The storyline, you have to just pencil him in now for the MVP again. Except for if he plays 60 games.
I haven't got LeBron James as my divisional MVP.
You got D-Rose? Joakim? You Joakim love? Your Homanism?
Joakim Noah.
Such a homer.
As my, such a homer. No, the reason is because I think anytime you put him out there, I think you've got to put him with LeBron. I'm talking about with Kyrie Irving, and now I think their big three is
just
good.
admit that it's homerism. It's fine. Homerism is cool. Just admit it's homerism.
I mean, the thing is, so you got these three guys. I think you could make a case this season. I think at the end of the year, where Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, and LeBron James will be in the top 10 of MVP voting. I think they just will be. I don't think Kyrie Irving's a top 10 player in the league, but I think he'll be in the top 10 MVP voting.
Aren't they on national TV every night or something due
Exactly.
to the schedule? And national writers won't be able to watch anyone else because they'll just be watching the Cavs.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're going to be fun to watch. I mean, on any given night, if it isn't your team playing, you're going to think, oh, just put on Cleveland because you never know what you're going to see. But, I mean, I think the MVP voting is going to be spread around those. If I'm sitting here thinking about MVP voting overall, you can only look at Chicago or look at Cleveland. I think D Rose is obviously still it's still an unknown factor. I mean, it's hard for me to say that because I just still think he is. We don't know what we're going to get out of him. And I think Joakim Noah, for me, should have got more MVP consideration last year than he actually got. I think he'll successfully defend his Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think anyone's as good a defensive player as he is. And I think he'll get more consideration because I still think he'll have a hell of a lot to say in how that offense gets set up. And I think he'll be even more involved, certainly from the get-go, and we'll see more triple-doubles from Joakim. And so for me, he is the division MVP. I don't think Chicago will actually win the division, though, funny enough. I think Cleveland will be the team that will go on. When they get things going, I can see them putting up a 25 winning streak one time. Then they'll put up another 15-game winning streak. And they'll do it effortlessly. So, yeah, I think Cleveland will be the divisional winner. Only just, but Joakim will be the MVP.
Stephen Edwards trying to mask his homerism of Joakim Noah by picking the Cleveland Cavaliers to win the division. Let's give him top marks for that. Stephen, that will do us for our divisional preview of the Central. We will check back in with you and everyone as we move on through the Eastern Conference and then to the Western Conference. We're enjoying these divisional previews. Make sure you check out the website, ftukpod.wordpress.com. You'll find all the previews up there, as you will on the US Sports Media YouTube channel. Stephen, these are fun.
Yeah, these are fun. So that's 2 divisions down now, 4 to go.
2 divisions down, 4 to go. We'll speak to you then.